Hello everyone, welcome back to my Pokemon review series. In this video, we are going over the one, the only, Eevee. Now, Eevee is a very interesting Pokemon in the sense that it is the most notorious branched evolution in the game. And because of that, it has the skills specialty. As of right now, all branched Evos go into skill specialty. Now, it's a normal type, so it's got the snoozing sleep type, pretty typical. And I'm not going to talk too much about the base Eevee because I don't really like to talk about the base evolutions. I think there's some potential with some of them if you want to run them with their ribbon, then there's a potential. Especially Eevee might be an interesting substitute if you want it at Snowdrop and you don't want a Vaporeon, because Eevee and Vaporeon are going to do the same things, but Eevee's going to cover Snowdrop better, especially if it has Berry Finding S. Even though it'll proc the skill less, it may give you extra strength while there specifically. Now, one very interesting thing to say about the Eeveelutions is that since there are so many of them, it's pretty easy to get their candy. They exist at every single island, Greengrass to Lapis, and it's probably going to be at the old gold power plant too, especially like I imagine they're going to put Jolteon there. So, you see them a decent amount, and whenever you do see them, you get a decent amount of candy. Like, if I go into the Espeon, or if I just go into one of these other guys, you can see that his sleep styles give you, like, this Umbreon will give you 7 candies for a 1-star style. So, like, they're a bit more on the rare side, but when you do see them, you get a decent amount of candy, and there are just so many of them that they do show up a decent amount. They're at every island, so you're, like, bound to encounter them probably at least once a week. And if not, Eevee is at every island, so you can see Eevee quite a bit too, as long as you're getting that snoozing type. So it's pretty easy to get Eevee candies. Additionally, a lot of people send them over the friends list, is what I found. Given that Eevee is so flexible, and because you might have more than one Eeveelution, you might need more candies. So it's not a matter of supply being overflowed is why people send it. It's more because demand is high for Eevee candies, because there's just so many things you can do with it. Additionally, because there are 8 different types of Eeveelutions, and Eevee is the normal type, which covers a 9th type, any type candies that are of those 9 types, which is half the types in the game, can be put into the Eevee, or put into an Eeveelution to get Eevee candies, which you can use on any of your other Eeveelutions. So, if you have electric type candy and you don't have any electric type Pokemon that you want to level up, if you just get a Jolteon, let's say you see one that's hungry, toss a single biscuit at it, maybe it's worth the shot every time that it shows up. It might mega hit sometime when it shows up, and then you just have it in the box. You don't get rid of it. You never use it, because it's probably not got good stats. It's probably got a level 1 main skill, which you don't need. Then you can just use it to convert that electric type candy into the Eevee candy, which then, let's say if you have a really powerful Espeon, you can now use the Eevee candy that you got from the Jolteon on the Espeon to power it up. So, there's a lot of ways to get Eevee candy, so it's kind of easy to power them up if you're only focusing on just one of them. Meanwhile, if you have a Flareon, an Espeon, a Sylveon, and a Vaporeon, suddenly you're splitting candies across 4 Pokemon, and you're effectively making it that you have a quarter of the candy that available to you as what you would have had before, because it's just being split across so many different Pokemon. So, as long as you're investing into the right Eeveelution, and the one that you truly need, it can be really easy to power level them. But if you're trying to get the most out of all the Eevees you ever catch, it's going to be pretty difficult to level them. Now, I'm just going to go over their ingredients list once, because it is the same across all Eeveelutions. Every single one has the same ingredients list, and what I can say about it on the Eevee is what I can say about it on any of the other ones. And that is, it's got milk, cacao, sausage. Now, cacao and sausage have a little bit of interesting synergy on salad week for contrary meat salad, but it's not an amazing meal, so you really don't want sausage in the last slot. It doesn't really matter too much though, because Eevee's a skill specialist, So it's not going to be producing enough of any of these ingredients to make a meal anyway. We're more looking at it for supplementing other things. I think the most interesting usage for an Eevee's ingredients is if you have milk, or even milk, cacao milk, there's an argument to be made there, then you can produce a decent amount of milk, which as of right now, milk doesn't have any meal that takes more than 12 milk. And even that one meal isn't very powerful, so like, of the meta significant meals, the ones on this end of the chart, none of them take more than 10 milk. Now that could change if they make more recipes. So don't necessarily think that your Eevee that's focusing on milk is going to be powerful forever. But in the current metagame, this might be your milk farmer. You might not ever need an ingredient specialist to actually cover that milk. You might be fine with just a skill specialist. So, it's also got the cacao, which cacao and milk, also pretty synergistic. Overall, it's a pretty nice ingredients list. As you can see, the flour gift macaron is one of the best dishes in the game. It takes a lot of cacao and a lot of milk. Now, I think that because it's a skill specialist, you're not going to be getting enough of either to be making that. But once again, we're looking at it as a supplementary thing. It's also in the Lovely Kiss smoothie. And even if you're willing to go down far enough, there's the sweet scent chocolate cake, which is also pretty good. So there's a lot of synergy with the milk and the cacao, which especially if it's on your Sylveon, that can be especially good because it's just always with you. But anyway, let's get into the actual... Oh, actually, before I get into the Eeveelutions themselves, I want to go over one thing. There is a bit of a divide between berry-focused Eevees and skill-focused Eevees. A berry-focused Eevee is going to have, like, Berry Finding S, Help Bonus, Help Speed M, you know, typical things you want to see on a Berry Finder. Meanwhile, a skill-focused Eevee is going to be, like, Skill Trigger, all that stuff. You really want it to be a skills-focused Eevee, but I think there's a lot of potential if you happen to catch a berry-focused Eevee. You're not hunting for one, but if you happen to catch one, and you need some sort of berry coverage at a different island that you don't currently have good berry coverage for, evolving it into the type that covers that island may be a good play for a temporary berry finder for that island. Now, the biggest thing about this is that they are going to be getting value from their skill and their berry, whereas a berry finder will always outperform them at the berry alone. So they really need to be getting value from their skill as well, so that some of these options are better than others. And I guess when it comes to which I would recommend evolving a berry finder Eevee into, I would say if you're going to Lapis, or if you're going to Cyan, make it a Vaporeon. It's the best option there. If you're going to Top, make it a Flareon. It's the only option there. If you are going to Snowdrop, make it into a Glaceon. Most likely. I'll get to that soon. And if you are going to Lapis, make it an Espeon. Because those are just the best for what the islands that they're at, for the berries that they produce. So, there are some exceptions to that. But I will, generally speaking... Oh, and if Old Gold Power Plant, we know it's type berries now. The only Eeveelution available there for berry coverage is the Jolteon. So if you don't have a single electric berry specialist yet, and you catch a really good berry finding Eevee, then Jolteon's maybe a decent option as well. That's most of the consideration I'm going to give to berry finding Eevees, except for in the case of Umbreon. Now, Umbreon is weird. I don't know whose idea this was. It's just probably the single most poorly designed Pokemon in this entire game. So, let's get into it. As you can see, it's got the dozing sleep type. That is standard for dark types in this game. And it boasts the highest skill trigger rate in the entire game. And it's not even on that slow Pokemon. It's slower than other Eeveelutions. It's a little bit behind pacing. I usually think of like 4640 as the average speed for base speed in this game. But I don't think of things as like ridiculously slow until we're pushing like 55 and beyond. So it's not like the slowest thing in the world, but it's not really fast either. It's not even average. But with a 14.4% skill trigger rate, whew, this thing is going to be proccing its skill day and night. In fact, if for some reason you really want to go gung-ho about getting the badge that is proc skills X number of times, you run a full team of Umbreons, you're going to have that thing way faster than anyone else in the world because they're just going to be proccing their skill left and right. However, this sounds all great, and it is great if that is your purpose. But really the way that a skill specialist needs to be contributing to the team is through having a valuable skill, as is in the name. An Energy for Everyone Pokemon does this. Like, there are direct and indirect ways of contributing to Snorlax's strength. The most direct way is through Charge Strength M&S, who just literally power up Snorlax. But there are indirect ways of doing it too, whether that's through energy recovery on other Pokemon, bringing them up in productivity, maybe boosting your meals so that they're overall stronger with Tasty Chance S and Cooking Power Up. That's how those skills specialists contribute to the production for the team. And particularly Energy for Everyone and Energizing Cheer, they go about that by giving energy to the other Pokemon so that they can do what they're good at better. The Gardevoir gives energy to the Raichu so that the Raichu can produce more berries. Now, what does the Umbreon do? It's got Charge Energy S, which, as much as I talk about how I think this skill is wasted on berry specialists, my gosh, it is wasted so much more on a skill specialist. This is just absolutely useless, because if you think about the way that this works, Charge Energy S is a skill that makes the Pokemon that's targeted by it better at what it does. Well, what Umbreon does well is proc its skill. So Charge Energy S procs, and it gives energy to the Umbreon, so that the Umbreon can proc the skill more. So it procs the skill to charge the Umbreon, to proc the skill, to charge the Umbreon, to proc the skill. But it's a closed loop. There's no point in that feedback loop where any strength for Snorlax is extracted. Now, there is the argument that given that the Umbreon is able to stay at 100% or 150% energy pretty much all the time, it's producing a decent amount more berries. But if you have a good Energy for Everyone healer, you can have almost that exact same effect. Maybe not quite always 150% energy, but you can have almost the same energy level on a berry specialist, on a Houndoom in Umbreon's case, so that it doesn't matter, and the Houndoom's always going to do better at that. And the Houndoom even has Charge Strength S, which is a skill that directly gives to Snorlax's strength. So not only is the Houndoom better at producing berries, because it is a berry specialist, but it's better at skills than the Umbreon is. So, who designed this mon to be this way? I don't know. Because it's got a shockingly high skill trigger rate, which could have been OP, but instead they put it on the most useless skill in the game for a skill specialist. What's even extra funny about this is because of the way energy works, it caps at 150%, so it will never go beyond that 150%. So the Umbreon skill after a certain point just literally does nothing, because it'll bring it from 147% to 150, or like 110 to 150. It just always bumps it back up to max, which there's no difference between 90% and 150%. So that whole range doesn't matter if it goes beyond that. So the Umbreon is just a weird Pokemon. However, I will say this. Umbreon does have one circumstance where I'd actually recommend an Eevee to be evolved into an Umbreon over any other Eeveelution. And that is in one specific case. If you have the berry finding Eevee of your dreams, it's got berry finding S, it's got help bonus, it's got help speed M, help speed S. It just looks gorgeous. Mwah. But it's got like speed of help up, main skill chance down. If that Umbreon, if that Eevee is naughty, boy, naughty Eevees were designed to be Umbreon. Because it's kind of ironic that that fits the dark type. But naughty Eevees were designed to be Umbreon because every other Eeveelution, I was talking about how they're going to be worse at making the berries than their berry specialist alternatives. Because of that, they need something to make them stand out against the berry specialist alternative. In the Eeveelutions case, that's going to be their skill, because that is what they're good at. Instead of necessarily being the best at their skill or the best at the berries, they'll be decent at both. In Umbreon's case, its main skill doesn't really matter, because it procs it so much anyway that it's going to be topped off at 150% energy, even with a level 2 skill, with main skill chance down. So it doesn't really care about its skill trigger rate being harmed by this nature. Every other Eeveelution, there's no case for running an Eeveelution with main skill chance down, because you want it to still proc its skill a decent amount so that it has something going for it over its berry specialist alternative. Now, this guy, even with the main skill chance down, this guy is still going to be outclassed by most Houndooms. But if you have this Umbreon and you want to raise it as something, because there's going to be a lot of value in this, even if it is a skill specialist, there's going to be a lot of value in the berries that it produces. And something interesting about it, you can just swap it off the team at will if you don't want to run it anymore, because it's going to never have energy issues. So if you have this spread on an Eevee, then this is the one circumstance where I recommend it being an Umbreon over anything else, but pretty much in no other circumstance will I ever recommend this guy. If you want to catch it, it's at top, which is interesting because its berry is good at Snowdrop. But it's at top. I do recommend having one in the box just for if you need more Eevee candy with dark type candies, but I don't recommend evolving one. I recommend just going to top for a while. If you see one, if you see a hungry one, toss it a single biscuit, hope it mega hits, and eventually you'll get one in the box just so you can use for candy conversion. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the Umbreon. Now that I've ranted about the worst Eeveelution, time to go into the ones that there might be some niche use cases for. The Jolteon. Jolteon boasts one of the fastest speeds in the game. It's probably the most significant thing about the Jolteon. It is the fastest speed of any non-legendary Pokemon as of right now. Tied with the Raichu and the Gengar at 36 minutes and 40 seconds, so this dude is fast. Now, but I wouldn't ever recommend evolving a non-berry finding S Eevee into a Jolteon, and that's primarily because of the way that its skill works and some of the synergy that you're looking for if you're looking to invest into a Jolteon. The biggest thing that you want with a Jolteon is you're looking to pair it with Raikou. As another electric type, if you have berry finding S, pairing that with Raikou can be pretty powerful to give it more berries on its when Raikou forces helps. And if you don't have the berry finding S on the Jolteon, then pairing it with Raikou is going to have half the value of what it could have before. So you really don't want a Jolteon without berry finding S, because that is the niche case where it stands out against a lot of the other Eeveelutions. Now, its main skill is Extra Helpful S, which is just the random version of the Legend skill. It picks a random Pokemon on the team and just procs X number of helps. Now, I don't really like this skill because, so when I get into Energizing Cheer, one nice thing about Energizing Cheer is a while back they made an update to make it so that it is more likely to proc on the Pokemon that actually need the energy. It's more likely to proc on the Pokemon with the lowest amount of energy. Extra Helpful S, on the other hand, is still completely random. There is no choice. This Jolteon has zero choice of if it procs on the Energy for Everyone healer or on the Berry Finding S Altaria, which it makes it that it's just too inconsistent in most cases, especially if you don't have Berry Finding S on the Jolteon, because most of the time you're going to be running an Energy for Everyone healer, which you probably don't have Berry Finding S on because you're looking for skill triggers on that first and foremost. And you're only going to have Berry Finding S on that if you just happen to get lucky and it is there with the main skill chance stuff. But then that means the Jolteon, if you're running all Berry Finders in a Jolteon plus an Energy for Everyone healer, even then, every time this skill procs, it's got a 2 in 5 chance to proc on a skill specialist. That's going to give you a third the value of what a Berry Finding S berry specialist would be able to give you. And arguably even less on the ingredient specialist, because ingredient specialists shine by producing really heavy procs of ingredients that can be even more valuable than berries. So having that 2 of 5 chance to proc on a skill specialist just severely weakens the skill. And if you can even just bring that up to a 1 in 5 by having Berry Finding S in the Jolteon, then if it procs on itself, it's not as bad. But overall, I wouldn't ever recommend the Jolteon without Berry Finding S. So there's some niche use case for it if you have the Raikou, the really good Raikou. It currently exists only at Greengrass. However, I suspect this is going to be changing here in about a week. Once they release the old gold power plant, I would be shocked, no pun intended, if this thing was not at the old gold power plant. I mean, just look at it. It's literally electricity. So I'm expecting to see it there. But yeah. Going on to the final of what I consider to be the not like off-meta picks for Eeveelutions. Going into the Leafeon. Now, I have the Leafeon clustered here, right, with the Sylveon, and I kind of want to talk about them both. So, Leafeon's dozing type, typical for grass types. Sylveon's snoozing type, typical for fairy types. Now, these two are your energy recovery Pokemon choices of the Eeveelutions. Typically speaking, I don't recommend Eeveelutions for energy recovery, just because, so, Gardevoir, hands down the best healer in the game. If you look at Energy for Everyone, I already had it open, whoops. If you look at Energy for Everyone, then you can see that the Gardevoir just procs 3.5 times per day, roughly, when the Sylveon, the second best option, only procs about 3 times a day. Which is just a lot more. If you have the right sub-skills and nature on the Sylveon, then it might outperform even decent Gardevoirs, but it's going to be pretty difficult. And additionally, the Sylveon and the Leafeon, they both only get 1 evolution level, so they're going to have lower inventory than what the Gardevoir will have, and they're going to have a lower base skill level, which means you're going to have to use another skill seed on them to get them up to that like viability threshold. So they're a heftier investment. Now, the big thing going for them, though, is that the Sylveon is the best healer prior to Lapis. And Lapis is a pretty late game area. So you're looking at the Sylveon and the Wigglytuff primarily as early game healer options until you can unlock Lapis. However, as you can see here, the Sylveon compared to the Wigglytuff, yeah, it's better, but not really that much better that it's worth the extra skill seed of investment when you're not planning on using these guys long term, most likely, and you're eventually intending to replace them with a Gardevoir. So, realistically, I wouldn't ever recommend investing skill seeds into the Sylveon, but if you happen to come across one that's got the skill level up M, it's got like skill trigger M, and maybe like, I don't know, help speed, even just these first 2 sub-skills, I think that's a decent one to invest into, or at least get to become a Sylveon for an early game healer. But ideally hunt for the Wigglytuff first, because you're going to get an extra skill level off of it without investing any seeds. And they're just easier to catch, and then you're not splitting your Eevee candy across another Eeveelution. Because every Eeveelution you run, you make it harder to level your other Eeveelutions. So you really should maybe want the Wigglytuff instead. But if you happen to come across a really, really, really strong Eevee, and you don't have that Wigglytuff yet, you've been not having good luck on the Wigglytuff hunt, then there is a case to be made for evolving it into a Sylveon just so that you have access to that really powerful energy for everyone, because this skill, it is the best skill in the game, and it is necessary for you to have some sort of inventory management to play this game in a meta sense. Now, why not the Leafeon? Well, Leafeon has the Energizing Cheer main skill, which, as you can see here, it does proc 3.6 times. That's more than the Gardevoir, actually, and we consider the Gardevoir to be best healer in the game. However, there is an innate flaw with this skill, the Energizing Cheer, and that is that it gives energy to one random Pokemon on the team, which, given that it's random, it's not completely random. Fortunately, they did an update a while ago to give this skill a little bit more viability, in a sense that they made it so that it has a much higher likelihood of selecting the Pokemon on the team that currently has the lowest energy. People have found that to be about a 50-50 chance of picking the lowest Pokemon versus other Pokemon on the team. But still, there's just a lot of inconsistencies with it. It made it better, but it didn't make it good yet. And because of the fact that, you know, this Pokemon, it may choose to just recharge itself every time and not give any energy to the rest of the team. In that case, it's no better than the Umbreon, because it's doing the same thing. It may choose to charge up the Pokemon with an energy up nature that's already sitting at 100%, and then, boom, it's at 100%. It recharges the Pokemon with an energy up nature. It's giving it 50 energy. With the energy recovery up nature, there's energy being wasted there right away if it's at 100%. So, like, there's more likelihood of energy we wasted on this, rather than energy for everyone, which gives a little bit of energy to the entire team every time it procs. I generally consider, because of the randomness of this skill, I consider it to be, like, every time it procs, I consider it to be, like, half the value of an energy for everyone proc of the same skill level. Which, if you do that, then 3.64 divided by 2 comes out to 1.8, which, in that case, it's worse than a Ralts. It's about the same as an Igglybuff to be running the Leafeon. Actually, worse than the Igglybuff, because if you get a ribbon, look at that, the Igglybuff's at 2.66. So, Energizing Cheer, just not a very well-designed skill. If you can run 2 Pokemon with the Energizing Cheer, then it might replace your Energy for Everyone Pokemon. I talk about that most in terms of the Slow King with the Slow Bro, but Leafeon just doesn't really have a niche with that. The only thing it's really got going for it over the Sylveon is the fact that it can provide valuable energy recovery at one of the strongest islands, which is Lapis. Since it has the Durin Berry, that makes it a stronger choice for Lapis specifically, just because, I don't even know if I can call it a stronger choice. It makes it a reasonable option at Lapis specifically, because there it has Favored Berry. Especially if this thing has Berry Finding S, then there's a case to be made. However, if you're at Lapis anyway, you should be hunting for the Gardevoir, which means it's not going to be that long before you get the Gardevoir, hopefully, and your Leafeon will just be replaced, because Psychic Berries are at the same island as Grass Berries at Lapis. So even if you do invest in this guy, it's not going to be very long before it gets replaced. So I ultimately think that there is no circumstance where you should be investing into the Leafeon, unless you just really like its design. Once again, I think it's the type of Eeveelution that if you see it and it's hungry, throw a biscuit at it. You might have a candy converter for the future, but for now, don't use it. Look, don't touch. Yeah. The next one, so I already discussed the Sylveon. The Sylveon, pretty powerful because it's energy for everyone, but yeah, mostly an early game option. Espeon. Espeon, snoozing type, typical for Psychic Pokemon. It's got the skill specialty. Well, that's the case for all of them, actually. Now, it's got a 4.4% skill trigger rate. If I go into here, you can see that it's not the best at what it does. It is outclassed by Sudowoodo and Ampharos. However, the difference is decently close. The big way that it loses to the Ampharos, though, in other than just its skill triggers per day, is the fact that the Ampharos has the extra evolution, so it gains more from that. I find it interesting that the Sudowoodo loses to the Ampharos after 2,000 hours of slept, so I wonder if the Ampharos actually has inventory issues that the Sudowoodo does not, but it must. But the Espeon is like the third place option of the Charge Strength M Pokemon. And overall, it's a very strong option. In fact, if you don't need what the Flareon, Glaceon, or Vaporeon are providing, if you have like your ingredients are managed well, if you find that you're never throwing away ingredients, and you find that you never need more ingredients to fill your pot, if you're filling your pot consistently but never selling ingredients, then I think the Espeon is a fantastic option, because these ones are primarily for ingredient management. Because it just is giving Snorlax strength directly. The easiest skill to understand how it contributes to Snorlax's strength is the Charge Strength M. It's just giving him power. And overall, there's no like nuance to this. It's going to be good at pretty much every island because it's contributing to Snorlax's strength through the Charge Strength M, not through its berries, which berries they can vary heavily based off what island you're on. It's going to be extra strong at Lapis, but I think if you have a non-berry finding S skill specialist version of it, then this is one of your best options, just because it's really getting that strength out of the skill. And it's strong everywhere. It's one of the more likely to appear ones. It's at 3 different islands instead of just 2, like or 1, like a lot of the other Eeveelutions are. But overall, yeah, great Pokemon. I recommend it. Now, Flareon and Glaceon, these two are interesting in that I think they're the only two. So where we had the Leafeon and the Sylveon that stepped on each other's toes a little bit, it's more just the Sylveon trounces the Leafeon. The Glaceon and the Vaporeon, or not Vaporeon, Glaceon and Flareon pretty much do the exact same thing. Actually, they do the exact same thing. And that is Cooking Power Up S. Now, Cooking Power Up S is a very interesting skill. I think its primary strength is if you do not have access to good camp tickets, if you are not a premium player, if you're free to play, then they are fantastic for increasing the pot size to be just big enough to make the biggest meals. Because then you're getting a boost from, like, let's say before you could have made this ninja curry, and then after you get the meal, you have the right ingredients that you could make the Inferno Corn Keema curry. You're getting a boost of like about 4,000 strength there, just from the base value. After you add the level bonus to these, then that becomes even bigger. I think most things triple, so that makes that skill proc worth about 12,000. This skill is a tremendously valuable skill if you need it. Now, they are both outclassed by the Magnezone, as you can see here. And technically the Glaceon outclasses the Flareon just a little bit, but the difference is negligible, especially when you put in for inventory after sleeping with it. Then the difference is very, very small. So really, if you're debating between the Flareon and the Glaceon, then you should really just think, do you go to Top more or do you go to Snowdrop more? If you go to Top more, then go for the Flareon, because then it gets a little boost by having the favored berry. If you go to Snowdrop more, then you know what, go for the Glaceon, because it gets that little boost by having favored berry. But overall, they're both outclassed by Magnezone, so if you have access to a Magnezone, if you have a good Magnemite, then don't consider either of these, because they're just going to be outdone by the Magnezone, especially since the Magnezone has a 3-stage evolution, and it takes a stone, similar to how both of these take a stone. So it's going to get one more free skill level out of it, and especially since we're looking at it primarily in a free-to-play context to reach those higher tier meals, you're probably not going to have the skill seeds to invest into one of these guys to get them to that skill level 3, which as of right now, the pot size is 57. Having skill level 3, you're only going to be able to get it to 69. Yeah, 69 if you with one proc from them per day. if they don't have skill level up M. So these guys only get to 10. With skill level up M, they went to 17. That'll get you to... Man, why am I blanking on basic math? 74. These guys, with just skill level up M, won't be able to... unless you can get 2 procs off of them between each meal, you're not going to be able to consistently make these bigger meals. But with a Magnezone, since it has that extra level of evolution, if it has skill level up M, then it can get 22 in each proc, which means it only takes 1 proc to get you from 57 to 77, actually to 79. You'll be set with the Magnezone, whereas it'll be more difficult with these guys. So I'm more considerate for premium players that have access to some main skill seeds to put into these guys, and you don't have a Magnezone, but you're not a whale who buys good camp tickets every single week, so you want to have just an option. Additionally, I think that it can be strong for people who like to run Dedenne, because if you run Dedenne, then you're ultimately getting more skill. You're getting more value from their skill because the extra ingredients you're adding to the pot is getting multiplied by the Dedenne's crit chance on top of that. So Dedenne and these guys work in tandem, and especially if you are the type, there is a strategy that exists where the first day of the week, leading up to that first day of the week, you spend like multiple days beforehand to try and level or get many procs so that one meal on Monday morning has an absurdly high dish size, like 200, and on top of that has a high crit chance by running Dedennes. That can be tremendously powerful for carrying strength into the next week, and these guys will do that if you can't find the Magnezone to do it for you. So there is something to be said about that as well. An interesting role in the meta for them. It's a very interesting skill because it relies on having a lot of ingredients to be valuable. If you don't have the ingredients to fill the pot, then this skill is effectively worthless, because when you go to make your meal and you use the meal that had the cooking power-up S on it, if you can't fill that, it still gets wasted before the next one. So it's one that takes a lot of management, and if you're filling your pot all the time and you're selling ingredients, then they're a pretty good investment because you'll actually get usage out of those ingredients that you're making a lot of. But yeah, now time for the Vaporeon. The Vaporeon, I think, is arguably the most reasonable Eeveelution to create, strictly because it is the only Eeveelution where if you look at all the Pokemon that produce its main skill, it is the best one. It is the only one that isn't immediately outclassed by any other Pokemon. And interestingly, if you run the base Eevee, it's actually not that far behind it, but it's still fantastic at what it does. It's the best. It outclasses all these other options if you have a really good one. So ultimately, it's like, because it's the only one that is the best at what it does, and you can find other replacements for the other Eeveelutions, then this is arguably the most reasonable Eeveelution to make. It's the Slumbering Sleep style. I believe it is the only Slumbering Eeveelution. And it's got a decently high skill trigger rate of 6.1%. It's a little bit on the slower side, but not ridiculously slow, and it's got a scarily small inventory of 13, which I think was the same as the Leafeon. Yeah, but the Leafeon was faster, so this is actually doing better than the Leafeon was. It becomes 18 after evolution, but after ribbons, then its inventory becomes less of a problem. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting applications of how to use this ingredient magnet skill. A lot of people like to use it to stockpile Slowpoke tails, because the way it works is it picks 3 ingredients, and then it divides that whatever number the skill level's at by 3, and makes that many ingredients of each ingredient. On odd numbers, it just picks like on 8, it'll make 3 of 2 different ones and then 2 of the last one. So it's a pretty powerful skill if you use it right. But overall, you're mostly using its ingredients as filler ingredients, because it's not going to be consistently making any ingredient to be able to make a meal out of it, unless you're using some sort of weird strategy where you only unlocked so many ingredients I know there's one guy on Reddit who has a Slowpoke Tail focused account, so overall, it's one of the best Slowpoke Tail farmers in the game, actually, just because of the way this skill works. It picks completely random ingredients, and there's some awesome synergy with, if you run Suicune, you run Slowbro, Slowpoke, or Suicune, Slowbro, Slowking, the Vaporeon, and then either a Slowpoke or a Ditto with tails, then you can have a pretty interesting team that'll just produce the most amount of tails to stockpile into the next week. And because of how powerful tails are, it can be an interesting way to carry a lot of strength from one week into the next for powerful and strong events. As for how this guy functions, I think that's the primary usage for it, is to just stockpile a lot of ingredients. It's basically every time it's skill procs, you're getting a free ingredient ticket. At the lower levels, it'll be like an ingredient ticket S, but at the higher levels, it'll be like getting a free ingredient ticket M, almost. But yeah, it's a pretty cool Eeveelution, pretty cool Pokemon. I like it. And I don't have one myself. In fact, I probably will never invest one myself because I've got a shockingly good Heracross, but it's just kind of neat. Now, that has been a review of all of the Eeveelutions. I hope you learned something about them. I hope you've learned how to properly use them. And I hope you've gotten an idea of which one is the best one for your inventory of Pokemon. That is one thing to consider, is that not every Eeveelution is going to be the best option for everyone. Vaporeon's maybe arguably the one worth the most investment of the others, but in my case, I've got a good Heracross. I don't need to hunt for a Vaporeon because Heracross probably fills that job, so it's probably better for me to invest in something else. If I ever find a good Eevee. I'm on that hunt for ages. But overall, Eevees, it's one of the most complicated topics in the game, just because there are so many options. And I hope you learned something. Thank you.